if your biggest fear is success, whatever that means to you, and you're always the leader of your circle, you're probably going to hold yourself back subconsciously because you're afraid.
Well, I'm afraid to outgrow my peers. In other words, I'm going to be just competent enough to not be too much for my peers, but not incompetent enough to feel like a failure. I think that will resonate with people because I think that's what a lot of us do unconsciously because we all want to belong.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of Next Level University, where we teach you how to level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode. It was episode number 1303. The best question to ask yourself to learn about your purpose. My goodness, we are in trouble. Today,
One towel.
Today, for episode number 1304, another reason why your circle is everything. So my argument is that belief is the most important thing. I think Alan believes your circle is a very close second. Is that true?
That is true.
Alan's looking into the camera like a deer in the headlights right now. It's been a very long Monday.
Yeah, I'm a little giggly.
You're a little
Full
giggly.
transparency, a little giggly.
Okay. Where did this episode thought come from?
I need you to pull it together for us.
We were having a conversation the other day.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how the fear of success and fear of failure. Fear of failures.
Run it back.
No, we got to run it. You're going to be okay. Just pull it together. Be a professional.
All right. It's all good. We don't have to be perfect.
No, we're not.
We're
perfect.
just giggly.
There's no such thing as perfect. This is messy action.
One towel.
One towel.
One towel. All right. Yeah.
Tired. This conversation, this concept, this episode choice came from you and I having a conversation. And we said, okay, no matter if you have a fear of failure, you have a fear of success, if you are able to leverage that in your relationships, you're going to be in a very good position. So, Alan, if I wasn't afraid of failure, then I don't know if this ever would have worked because I'm always trying to keep up with you. If you weren't afraid of success, and we can go into what that looks like for us, if you weren't afraid of success, I wonder if you would have dealt with me for as long as you have.
Well, I don't think either of us would have dealt with each other as long as we have. One of my deepest fears was being alone. On a growth and goal-oriented journey. One of Kevin's deepest fears was being unsuccessful, being a failure. And so one thing that I've come to realize, Kev, is that honestly, I'm starting to wonder, okay, let me share this story. There's someone I coach who used to have her deepest fear be disappointing her peers and not fitting in. That used to be her deepest fear. Now her deepest fear is not achieving her goals and her dreams. Not maximizing her potential. Again, her words and her own unique flavor of that. She said, basically, I'm now just more afraid of not maximizing my potential than I am of fitting in or of not fitting in. And so I think everyone to some extent is driven by fear. We all are driven by two main things, desire and fear. Desire for that dream home, desire for that dream business, desire for that amazing intimate relationship, desire for that dream physique, desire for that athletic build, desire for that new car. Whatever the desires are, we're all driven by desires, but we're also driven by fear. We're driven by fear of not fitting in, fear of not being loved, fear of being alone, fear of being a failure, fear of being seen as a failure, fear of success, maybe. And so it's not that I was afraid of success. So let's unpack this. Kevin and I, probably 3 or 4 years ago now, we were at an event called Confident Women's Consortium, and there was a woman named Shauna Pelton speaking. Wonderful human being, amazing credentials. She brought me up on stage. She had me do some meditation on stage, and there was 5 of the deepest fears from her perspective, and I think one of them was judgment, one of them was success, one of them was failure, and there was 2 others. I forget what they were. But you asked her, you shouted from the audience, ask him if he's afraid of success. And I don't know if that was intuitive or where that came from.
I don't know.
But that was a big breakthrough for me because I had never articulated or communicated to myself that I was afraid of success until that point. And I started bawling, and she took me through a meditation of like, you need to forgive your 14-year-old self when my stepdad left and had to be the man of the house. And I don't think I felt like a successful man of the house in many ways. But anyways, what I've come to realize now, fast forward 4 years, and since then, thousands of coaching calls with all different people from all different backgrounds, all different countries, I now understand that everyone has a fear of failure or a fear of success, but it's not actually a fear of failure or a fear of success. For Kev, underneath the fear of failure is fear of not being good enough. And underneath of that, I think, is fear of not being loved because you're not good enough. Or maybe not loving yourself.
I think it's
on some level.
Fear of choices.
Fear of not having choices. Fear of being stuck.
I think
fear of not having certainty. Right?
Yeah.
And then for fear of success, for those of you out there who do resonate with that, I think it's actually fear of being alone, fear of being disliked, fear of being attacked or unsafe. And this is what happens, and so I want to share this. So this is what I wrote down. I wrote comfort zone with so there's 2 lines, and comfort zone is written right in the middle of them. And then on the top, there's plus. In the middle, there's equal to, and then below is minus. Think of your peer group, if you're out there watching or listening to this. Think of your peer group. Some people are more competent than you in certain arenas. Some people are less competent than you in certain arenas, and then some people are equal to. And you can think about this in fitness, you can think about this in finance, you can think about this in intimate relationships, you can think about this in any area. There's one person I'm going to mention here, Amy L., the amazing Amy L. She came and emceed at our event. She did an awesome job. What was fascinating for me was unpacking it behind the scenes with her, because she is normally someone who is concerned, at least to some extent, of being too much. We did an episode recently, Kev, on being too much. She is normally afraid of being too much for people, and I think her deepest fear is success. But what was fascinating is that when she was emceeing at our event, she was actually afraid of being too little in comparison to you and I on stage. And she admitted this. She wouldn't mind me sharing this. She's like, you guys are really strong speakers. You guys have 1,300 episodes. You guys have been speaking a lot more than I have. She was afraid of not being too much, but afraid of being too little. I think all of us are afraid of being too little or too much, or both. And it all depends on the context, and it all depends on the peer group. And so, to the point, another reason why your circle is everything, you need to have a circle that is growing, because otherwise you're going to be basically afraid to outgrow your peer group, or you're going to be afraid to not fit in with your peer group because they're going to outgrow you. And so you've got to be around a growth-oriented community. And I finally feel like I understand why that is, even though we always used to say you are the sum average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now I kind of understand why that is.
Yeah, I think this is I think for a lot of people, it's like, well, if the 5 people you surround yourself with read books, you'll probably read books. It's like, yeah, that's true. Or if the 5 people around you exercise, whatever it may be, yes. I think this is just a deeper layer of, if your biggest fear is success, whatever that means to you, and you're always the leader of your circle, you're probably going to hold yourself back subconsciously because you're afraid. But if your biggest fear, again, it's all contextual and it's all personal, but say your biggest fear is success and you're at the back of the pack, that's probably a good thing to a degree, because you're not afraid of outgrowing these
assuming
people.
You have high self-belief.
Right.
If you have high self-belief and high levels of competence and a high growth mindset, I think being behind is a really good thing. If you have low self-belief, a fixed mindset, I don't think being behind is good. I think being middle of the pack is probably better, or maybe a little bit ahead. And I never used to know this. I remember I said this a long time ago to one of my friends, one of my peak performance partners at the time. I said, if you want to know how to get good at chess, go lose at chess a bunch. And he's like, that's not smart at all. What are you talking about? Now I understand, for me, losing at chess, if I wanted to get better, I would just keep working at it, and I would pick. So in chess, there's novices, there's amateurs, there's experts, there's masters, and there's grandmasters. If I play a grandmaster, I actually wouldn't stop until I was as good, if I cared about chess. And I realize now in hindsight that that's because of high self-belief and high grit and high growth mindset. Whereas if someone has low self-belief, you should never play a grandmaster right out of the gate, because you're gonna crush your self-esteem and your self-confidence right out of the gate. And so now I know why that never landed. And you kind of have to have a peer group that is suitable to your own current circumstances. And I think that that's a whole nother probably episode, but you really got to figure out, like, if you have too many people ahead of you and you have low self-belief, you're in trouble. If you have too many people behind you and you have high self-belief, you're also in trouble. I'm constantly looking for people that are ahead of me because it motivates and inspires me. But if I have everyone ahead of me, I'm also overwhelmed too. So this is a pendulum that can swing either way for everybody. But again, like we talk about on this podcast, everyone has a home. Do you tend to struggle with self-belief, or do you tend to struggle with arrogance? Do you tend to struggle with self-worth, or do you tend to struggle with entitlement? And I think knowing where you're at, every human has these issues, these challenges, I should say. The question is, are you surrounding yourself with people that ignite the best in you and that support you along the way?
And we did an episode recently on the 5 buckets, right? Did we talk about the 5 buckets recently? This is pretty much it in a nutshell. If you have a bunch of people who are, so we've talked about this before. I like to know what the ceiling and the floor is. And all I mean by ceiling and floor is, let's just say the most successful podcast of all time is blank. The average podcast is blank. And then like a podcast that's never going to make it is blank. I just like to know where we fall in all of that, because it helps me understand things differently. For me, I like that. I like that context. So
are you more ignited by being ahead of or behind?
Ahead of.
Really?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, because it just, I don't know. I don't know if being behind really does much for me. I don't know if I'm wired that way.
That's
I like
powerful.
winning. I like winning. I don't like losing. It's just, for me, it's an unfortunate requirement to get where I want to get. I'm not like, yeah, we lost. There's so many lessons. I've learned to try to adopt that mindset. But for me, if I could win every day forever, I would win every day forever.
Yeah. I'm starting to understand that.
Yeah.
I will be a much better coach because of how truthful you've been about this stuff.
I appreciate it.
Because, of course, man, it's so interesting. A lot of people don't want to admit that.
I think it's powerful. And I think I don't know, I would say 80% of the people who are listening would probably resonate. That's my guess.
Do you remember when we had a mentor who said, eventually you got to take a W. You need a W.
100%.
You like clung on to that. I thought that was silly.
I needed it.
I know. And I understand now too, because you do need some W's. You can't be losing in every area.
No.
It's just detrimental. It's not constructive. But I think winning all the time is also deconstructive.
It's valid.
Because you need something to benchmark against that's ahead of where you are.
Yeah.
If all you're doing is winning, you're not going to get any better, honestly, because you don't have necessity. But if all you're doing is losing, it's going to be deconstructive for your self-esteem and your self-belief, and you're not going to be motivated. You're going to be crushed. I don't think you can get anywhere without self-esteem. So I think, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting because for me, I always kind of am losing. That's why I try to celebrate the wins, because I'm playing your game more than I'm playing my own.
I didn't understand that until recently.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I couldn't explain it in the beginning because I didn't know the difference. You can't really explain a difference that you don't understand yet, or you don't even recognize. I knew there was a difference between you and I, but it wasn't to the degree it is. I've been telling you for a couple of weeks. I'm like, hey man, and you've agreed, but I think it's different. I was like, I need a redesign, man. I am burning down like badly. I need to get my stuff together. We've been pouring way more into business than anything else. Great. We had our highest month ever. Awesome. But like, I need to get back to baseline here because I need to come up for air, where for me, I feel like we're making a lot of progress and that's good, but it's also destructive where it's like, I'm struggling to do anything at this point. But here's the other thing though.
I absolutely love book club. It is my favorite way to start the weekend. We talk about the chapter that we read previously, and it made a big difference in my life and the beginning of my journey of self-development. And it is a very kind and welcoming community, and it's a great space where if you want to just sit and listen, you're able to, but there's also a lot of space for discussion and questions. I have nothing but good things to say about book club.
I'm struggling too, but I think that what Stephen Kotler said when we interviewed him all those years ago, what was it, 4% and 40% or something like that? Yeah. Some people are ignited by being 40% outside their comfort zone. Yeah. Other people are ignited by being 4% outside their comfort zone, something like that. Yeah. And I remember that really landed for Kevin and I. And if you're listening, this isn't about Kevin and I want you thinking about you. Like, are you someone who really, really, really needs a challenge to be ignited and like needs humble pie constantly? Or are you someone who really struggles when they're outside their comfort zone too much? And I do realize there's a difference, because I'm witnessing some different business partners that I'm coaching now. And it's very clear that they have two different paradigms when it comes to what ignites them. It's like one person is super ignited and motivated when the business is losing against their goals. And the other business partner is like just suffering, basically. And it's like, okay, so this person needs to focus more on the wins. This person needs to focus more on the bigger goals. And again, we've been talking a lot about that, but I hope the listeners are figuring out which end they're on more. I think that's the benefit to you and I, Kev, is we can just finally be honest and humble about whatever is true for us. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to make it seem like, I mean, lately it's been pretty brutal. And I don't want to make it seem like, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm okay. I've got a roof over my head. I've got a beautiful, amazing partner. I've got food in my fridge, and I've got water in my jug. So like, I don't want to say I'm suffering, because this is not suffering compared to what I think real suffering is. But I would say that, do I feel super abundant and fulfilled and like we're winning? No, absolutely not, right? So I think we're a little bit below 5. For you, you're probably at like a 2. I'm probably at like maybe like a 5, yeah.
So it's so interesting. And this is kind of the thought. If you say you're going to start running, for some reason I've had a weird desire to start running. Don't ask me why. I have no idea. I saw somebody running through the woods the other day, and I was like, oh, that looks really nice. Again, I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. But so imagine you join a running group. If you are, say 3 miles is really easy for you, and you join a running group where the majority of people struggle to run 1 mile, it's probably not the right place. You're going to lead it. It's going to be so easy. You're not necessarily going to get better. Now, say you are comfortable running 3 miles and you join a group where, their average is 25 miles. Odds are you're going to get left behind, this is all depending on how you feel. If you're the type of person who doubts yourself, you're maybe going to go one time and say, this is not for me. If you're the type of person who gets driven by that, you might say, hell yeah, this is exactly what I need. I need somebody to kick me in the butt, and I want to be the floor. Some people do really well as the ceiling. Other people do really well as the floor. Really well as the floor. The problem is, you have to know yourself, and you have to know, what does being the floor mean to you? What does being the ceiling mean to you? Because some of us, we turn it off. So say you're the most in shape in your friend group, you might just turn it off. Because it's like, I don't have to impress anybody. I don't have to work that hard. Everybody I hang out with doesn't value fitness. They're not going to look any better than me. Okay. Or the opposite end of that, where you hang out with people who are super in shape because you want that to inspire you. This is a thing that's running a lot of us that I don't think we really, really understand, because it's like a layer removed. And you have to filter it through your own understanding of yourself and the people around you. It's very interesting.
There's a book called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, and he talks about what he refers to as talent hotbeds. And the thesis of the book, I'll be brief, is all of the people that were famous artists during the Renaissance all happened to be in Paris. There's like a huge percentage of professional female tennis players, all from the same small town. What the thesis of the book is that the 5 people you surround yourself with are the most important, because it's not just genetics, it's also the environment. And this is in the book, he talks about this. There's a reason he says that Brazilian soccer players Brazil always tends to win the World Cup. Not always, I shouldn't say, but the most majority of the time. The best soccer players in the world, statistically speaking, are apparently from Brazil. Okay? Based on the data from the book. They figured out the reason. Daniel Coyle studied the way they play soccer in Brazil, and the boundaries of the court are smaller. And they go through the socioeconomic stuff. It's like, okay, well, there's a lot more time. There's more weather, nicer weather. Like if you grow up in like northern Russia, you're not going to play a ton of soccer as a kid, you know? And so the boundaries of they also found out the goal is actually smaller. So you have to be more precise as a kid in Brazil playing soccer. So the point is kind of you're basically around a bunch of really good soccer players. You play a lot more soccer because of the weather, and the rules make the game harder. So you have to be better and more precise. So what I'm really trying to say here is your environment and those people you are spending time with are affecting you unconsciously in a constructive or deconstructive way. And the only thing that I would say is start looking at it from that lens and figuring out maybe it is deconstructive for you to be around too many next level people. I never used to think that way. In my head, it was always, yeah, of course, try to get around more competent, amazing, incredible, people. But maybe it's more of a staircase than a trampoline for you. Maybe you got to slowly and incrementally work your way up, and maybe you want to be winning more. And I kind of get it now, Kev, because I've always noticed that with you. You'll get like overwhelmed with like a bunch of people that are all multimillionaires, and it takes you way outside your comfort zone, and it's not good for you long term if we don't like come up for air after stuff like that. Whereas in the past, I think that's why you had so many anxiety attacks, is because we were constantly around so many people that were so far ahead, at least in the arenas we were working toward. They weren't ahead in character or other things. Emotional intelligence, they definitely weren't, in my opinion. But I do think when it comes to podcasting, speaking, finance, wealth creation, career development, I think they were probably pretty far ahead of you. So it must have been really hard in hindsight to kind of keep up with all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it still is, right? It's like, I don't know. I haven't even had time to sit down, and I shouldn't say I haven't had time. I haven't prioritized this with the time that I have to sit down and figure out how many podcast clients we have. I think it's over 40 at this point. And it's like, okay, that's happening. Live event, group coaching. There's just so much going on where I'm definitely burnt out at this point, to the point where I know like taking a day isn't it. You know how sometimes it's like, yeah, let me take a day. It's like, no, did it. I took Sunday. We spend time with family. So it's just, yeah, it's one of those things. But now my fear of failure is different. It's like my fear of failure is at a different level now. It's not like I'm afraid, a podcast is going to go bad. That's not it. Right. I'm more afraid of like, I'm missing something in the business that's going to come back and bite us. Like it's different. So I think that's the interesting thing is as you spend time with people who help you understand whatever side of things or level of things you're at, that helps me understand, okay, failure now is drastically different than it used to be. It's not really failure. It's just like I'm struggling to keep up with everything, where success for you might be different because you understand no matter what, you're most likely, as long as we communicate correctly, you're never really going to outgrow me. I mean, are you going to be more competent? Sure. Are you going to know more? Sure. But I think as long as we communicate that along the way, and as long as I communicate, hey man, you got to slow down. Like I need you to slow down, or let me slow down, one of the two. And you can say, I need you to speed up, or I need you to let me speed up. I think that's kind of the theme here, the thesis.
Definitely. And I mean, even earlier today, I said, don't worry, take the night. I got it, know? And that's of course, got to do it. And I want to deploy all of our greatness uniquely. I think everyone has certain strengths and weaknesses. And my goal is always to, make sure that we're leveraging your strengths to the best of our abilities. I think what's been fascinating is realizing how many of your strengths are my weaknesses. And I didn't know that before. And vice versa as well, and I think teamwork is about being honest and vulnerable about that stuff, because I think that's when people get really hurt and businesses fail. I think we've come a long way. I get emotional when I think about it because it's like crazy to think how we figured all this out by getting along as long as we have when we're so different. Like,
I
that's
just
really
wanna win.
magnificent.
I want to win, and I think you don't want to lose people. And I think that's a perfect, like, yeah, man, tell me what I got to do to stay on the team. And the same for you of like, hey, this is what needs to happen for us to stay on the team. I think that's it. I think it's just the perfect storm of us admitting that. You know, I'm not afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of being a failure. I'll find people. People are easy to find, for me at least. Success never was. Success was always hidden. The people are, you can see people around you all the time. They're always there.
Yeah, and if you're out there listening, if you're more afraid to lose people, just admit it and be vulnerable, because that is what's holding you back. If you're more afraid of being a failure, just admit it and be vulnerable, and we can help you. We can help you with both. We can help you with both. Reach out. I hope you do.
And I don't want to I know that was a joke, but I don't want to minimize it. If you are afraid of success and or failure, I'm not poking fun at that. It's very interesting how fear of success for me is like a wall. It's like it's very hard for me to conceptualize that. Where for Alan, fear of failure might be that. So I just wanted to lighten the situation a little bit. Next level,
One
nation.
last thing, brother.
Oh my God. Yes,
I know. So Kevin and I talked behind the scenes about this episode. I think this was before the weekend, like last Friday or something. I forget.
I don't even know what day it is, man.
But I talked to Kevin about the ceiling and the floor, and I said, you're afraid of failure. I'm afraid of success. And we've both been vulnerable enough and humble enough to admit that. And we're overcoming that too. It's not like that's the end or anything. What about the people out there that are afraid of both? And I said, what about the people who are trying to stay in this lukewarm middle ground of, well, I'm afraid to outgrow my peers. In other words, I'm going to be just competent enough to not be too much for my peers, but not incompetent enough to feel like a failure. I think that will resonate with people, because I think that's what a lot of us do unconsciously, because we all want to belong. Belonging is such a deep part of the human condition. I think we all want to belong, and I think we're all afraid that we're not going to belong. And I think that when you get really competent and you get better than other people at stuff, it is true. You sometimes get people poking holes in your cup. They want to see you lose. And if you've never experienced that, I'd be surprised. It's a thing. But there's also the opposite of that, of being left behind and getting picked last in gym class or whatever it is. You know, I've been on both ends of this spectrum, I'll tell you what, and both ends are really, they come with their own challenges. So I just wanted to share that.
I think that's a very valuable perspective. Next Level Nation, if you are either one of these or both of these, make sure you surround yourself with people who understand, and make sure you surround yourself with people who have goals and they're willing to be vulnerable and communicate their fears with you. Join our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. Link is in the show notes.
If you have never joined book club, we promise that it is an inclusive community. I know it can be intimidated to read a deep book like Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, which we joke in book club is Dr. Caroline Leaf. We joke the title might as well be Everything's Your Fault and Here's Why. No, it's just about neuroscience and how you really can take responsibility for the things that you get good at and don't. It's really a very growth mindset book from a neuroscientific perspective. But this book is done in a couple weeks. Book club is an inclusive place where you can join. You don't have to have read every chapter. You don't even have to have read the chapter, quite frankly. We encourage you to. But if you're looking for a reason to start reading more and a group of people who are like-minded, who care about books and care about growth, that is the place. We also have a private WhatsApp group as well. So the link to register to book club, it's every Saturday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The link will be in the show notes.
Next Level Nation, tomorrow for episode number 1305. What does vulnerability actually mean to you? So Alan and I had different experiences on stage at Next Level Live, and that was the inspiration for that episode. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Sail away from toxic, Next Level Nation.